Hey there and welcome. Let me ask you something. What if we could actually control the weather? I mean, really control it. Make it rain whenever and wherever we wanted. It sounds like something straight out of a movie, but as we're about to see, this idea is very, very real.
Just think about that for a second. The power to just summon rain from the sky. You could fight off droughts, you could literally wash away toxic pollution, it could change everything. But here's the big question. Is it actually possible?
And you know, this isn't just some abstract, futuristic idea. Just recently, the city of Delhi, which was being absolutely choked by this thick, nasty blanket of smog, decided to give it a shot. They tried to literally wash the sky clean by making it rain.
But it was a bust. After all that planning and effort, all they got was a little bit of drizzle. No big downpour, no real improvement. So that brings us to the real mystery here. Why? Why didn't this incredibly ambitious plan work? To figure that out, we've got to dive into the science behind it all.
Okay, so to get to the bottom of what went wrong in Delhi, we have to start with the fundamentals. What are scientists even doing when they try to make it rain? Well, the whole technique is called cloud seeding. So at its core, cloud seeding is really all about giving Mother Nature a little nudge. You're basically spraying these tiny particles, usually a salt mixture, up into the clouds. The goal is to encourage all that water vapor that's already up there to condense and form raindrops. So you're not creating water out of thin air, you're just helping the water that's already there to finally fall down.
Here's kind of how it's supposed to work. First, a plane has to fly up and find the perfect kind of cloud. That's key. Then it shoots off these flares that release the salt mixture. These little salt particles act like tiny magnets for water vapor, helping it clump together into droplets. And as these droplets bump into each other, they get bigger and bigger and heavier until, boom, they fall as rain. Sounds pretty straightforward, right?
Well, the theory might sound simple, but putting it into practice, that's a whole other story. This is not some brand new idea. In fact, people have been trying to tinker with the sky like this for more than 75 years.
It actually all kicked off back in the 1940s, when some scientists at General Electric accidentally made it snow inside a lab freezer. That discovery led to the first big government program, Project Cirrus. By the 60s, the US was trying to increase snowfall over the Rocky Mountains. And of course, who could forget 2008, when China used cloud seeding to try and guarantee clear skies for the Beijing Olympics opening ceremony. So yeah, it's been tried all over the world for all sorts of reasons, and honestly, the results have always been kind of hit or miss.
And it turns out, India has its own long and complicated history with this technology, going back decades before that recent attempt in Delhi. And this history? Well, it holds some really important clues to our whole mystery.
India's first go at this was way back in 1952, using hydrogen balloons to get salt up into the clouds. And get this, there was another failed attempt over Delhi back in 1962. For years and years, the results were just sporadic. It was almost impossible to prove if the rain that fell happened because of the seeding, or if, it was just going to rain anyway. There was no real way to measure if it was working.
So for decades, that was kind of the story. Really interesting idea, but no solid proof that it actually worked consistently. But then came a landmark Indian study that set out to finally get some real concrete answers.
It was called CAIPEX. That stands for the Cloud Aerosol Interaction and Precipitation Enhancement Experiment. And for the first time, scientists weren't just, spraying and praying for rain. No, they spent nearly a decade just studying clouds before they ran these incredibly careful, controlled experiments between 2017 and 2019.
And the results? They were honestly staggering. During the trials over a drought-prone area in Maharashtra, this experiment generated an extra 867 million liters of water. That is a ton of water. But what's really amazing is how they proved it.
They did it scientifically. They had a control group, some clouds got seeded, and other similar clouds nearby were just left alone. And the data couldn't have been clearer. As you can see right here, the places where they seeded the clouds got, on average, 46% more rain than the places they didn't. This was it. This was the proof everyone had been waiting for. Under the right conditions, cloud seeding absolutely, definitely works. So that brings us right back to where we started. If that big CAIPEEX experiment was such a massive success, why was the recent attempt in Delhi such a letdown? Well, we now have all the pieces of the puzzle we need to solve this case. And here it is, the big aha moment. The success of CAIPEEX wasn't just about the technology, it was about the timing and the selection. They targeted these big, juicy, moisture-rich monsoon clouds that were already primed and ready to make rain. Delhi, on the other hand, they tried this with post-monsoon clouds, which are way drier. The whole atmosphere just wasn't right for creating a downpour. It was literally like trying to squeeze water from a dry sponge. You can squeeze all you want, but if the water isn't there to begin with, you're not going to get much.
So, what's the bottom line here? What does all this mean for the future of trying to control our weather? Well, it tells us that the answer isn't a simple yes or no. It's a lot more complicated than that.
Here's the main takeaway from all this. Cloud seeding is a really powerful tool for sure, but it is not a magic wand. It can absolutely boost rainfall, but only from the right kind of clouds under the right atmospheric conditions. You can't just make rain appear out of a clear blue sky. It's a complex, expensive science that needs all the perfect ingredients to be in place for it to work.
And that leaves us with an even bigger question to chew on. As our world keeps changing and our cities keep struggling with things like pollution, is trying to engineer the weather the real solution we should be chasing? Or is it maybe a distraction from the much, much harder work of fixing these problems at their source? That's the question I want to leave you with. Thanks so much for joining me for this explainer.